Hello and welcome to Gadget Joe, and today we're taking a look at a monitor powered by this tiny little PC over here. Oh, and wait a minute, the monitor is actually absolutely massive. So yes, in today's video we're taking a look at the PIXL CM34G3. This is a huge 34-inch ultra-wide Quad HD display by PIXL. Now, we recently reviewed the 27-inch curved 165Hz monitor by PIXL, and it blew us out the water with the quality and the feature set for the price point. It was very much marketed as a mid to high-end display on a very budget-conscious price point, and this is something that's very similar because this is absolutely ram-packed full of features, which I'll get to very shortly. And the best part about this is that it is a 1440p or a 2K monitor with a 165Hz refresh rate, 1 millisecond response time, and you can pick this up for around £300. Now, to be able to get a monitor this size or even a TV this size with the qualities that you get included is pretty much unheard of. Now, obviously there are monitors on the market that you can achieve that with, but this one offers so much more to the table. And we're going to take a look today to see exactly what you get for that money. So before we do anything, we're going to take a look at the unboxing experience. Now, the box for this device is absolutely enormous because the monitor is enormous. Obviously, once you've got it out of the box, it is well packaged in some foam, and obviously then you have a static bag on top of that to protect everything, and everything is just really well packaged. You do get some extra accessories included. You then get a UK plug to connect to the power supply, which is what you see here. This is obviously what's used to power the display itself. It is a 96-watt power supply, and it's a relatively compact brick considering, so it should just tuck in quite nicely underneath your desk or behind your monitor or wherever you want to put it. It does mean that you've got a decent amount of length as well included from this and this combined, so that you can plug it in wherever you need to, so you're not really refined to where you need to be on the desk. You do also get a USB to Type A to Type B connector, and that allows for all the pass-through functions of the display to work properly. You then also get a DisplayPort cable included right out of the box, so that you can take full advantage of that 165Hz goodness without having to upgrade any cables. Assembling the unit is super simple. All you have to do is take this thin aluminium stand and then remove the thumb screw from the bottom, mount the legs that sit on the bottom, and then secure it in with that said thumb screw. Now, this is a toolless assembly design, something that more and more manufacturers are opting to choose for, and it's definitely something that needs to stay. You can tighten it with a Phillips screwdriver if you need to, but really you're not going to need to because you have a tab on that thumb screw that allows you to really get in there and get it tight. Mounting the display to the stand is also super simple because all you have to do is line up the two metal hooks on the back of the stand and to the display itself. Once you've got those lined up, there's a little button on the back that you need to press in that lifts the bottom plate that grabs the display, and that then simply clicks into place. And as you can see, everything is secured. It has a good range of motion as well, and also that stand just looks absolutely fantastic. Now, it doesn't carry a massively strong gaming aesthetic straight out of the box. It does have some RGB on the back, which I'll turn the monitor around now to show you. It does simply show the RGB in the ring around the stand at the back. You cannot change the colour modes on it, unfortunately. It just cycles through on that. Maybe in future revisions they could probably look at maybe adding different modes for the RGB lighting, but as it is, it will simply create a nice little visual lighting aesthetic on your desk when set up. It is super thin as well. The entire thing sits in at just basically a hand's width. It is really quite amazing what they packed into such a compact body. It looks nice and sleek, and it will sit in proud and nice in any gaming setup. The display has very limited bezels, if not almost none. Obviously the bottom does have a quite large chin on that, but that is pretty much to be expected. It does house the controls on the bottom. The controls on the bottom are a little bit plasticky, but certainly not a deal breaker. One thing I do notice on the buttons front is the fact that there is no stickers or any sort of signage to say what the buttons do. Obviously, once you've got them set up on your display and you're pressing the buttons, you can then see what they do, because the on-screen menu will basically point down to which button you need to press. But I do think a little bit of signage on there just to say what the buttons are before you do anything would be a nice addition to see. So what we're going to do now is talk about the front. Hello, look how much room's in here. It's a bit cramped, it's not quite as tall, but I've got loads of room this side because look how long this is. It's obviously a full ultra-wide monitor. Now the specs of the PIXL CM34G3 are plentiful, to say the least. Now this is a monitor that you can pick up for around £300. That's an absolute bargain for something of this calibre. Now what you have here is a 34-inch ultra-wide quad HD display. Now the 34-inch ultra-wide, as you can see here, is a very wide angle system. It's a 21:9 aspect ratio, so it's slightly wider than an average setup. In fact, you've got a very similar sort of space here as two 24-inch monitors put side by side, but the best thing about this setup is there's no monitor line in the middle, there's no bezel sat in the middle of two monitors. It is just one single monitor. It also means just one plug instead of having two, and everything is aligned perfectly. All the colours match, and it is just perfect for what you need. When it comes to versatility and practicality of an ultra-wide monitor as well, it is absolutely unbeatable. You can have everything you want on this side of a monitor, or alternatively, you can have everything you want on this side of a monitor, and you could even split it to 4, so you can have them either side, as you can see, and you've now effectively got 4 displays. Now it's not quite a 4K monitor. 4K monitors are 3840 by 2160, so that's a pixel count, which makes it 4K. Now this is a 2K monitor, effectively speaking, or a 1440p monitor, which is Quad HD. Now Quad HD is effectively 4 times the resolution of standard HD, which is deemed as 720p. So this monitor here is 3440 by 1440. Now, despite the fact that it's not a true full 4K monitor, it certainly does have a fantastic image quality, as you can see here, and shortly in this video you're going to see some gameplay on the monitor. Now, gaming is something that this monitor is mostly targeted for, and that is because of the fact that it also features a 165Hz refresh rate. Now a high refresh rate is ideal for gaming, so it stops any jittering or stuttering in gameplay, making it ideal for fast-paced gaming. It does also feature a 1 millisecond response time, meaning that the response time from the monitor and the input of your keyboard or mouse or computer or anything like that is blazing fast, making gaming absolutely perfect on a monitor like this, meaning that you're not going to miss a single beat during the gameplay. It is an IPS panel, and whilst it's quite controversial because a lot of panels use LED technology nowadays, an IPS panel simply offers better colour gradients and also a much better viewing angle. Now this monitor alone is rated at 89, 89, 89, 89, and what that means is that no matter what direction you look at the monitor, whether it's straight on, from the side, horizontal, vertical, whatever, there is an 89-degree viewing angle on all of this. That's almost 90 degree, 1 degree out. It means that you can stand to the side of a monitor and still see the image in all of its sharpness and clarity. There's no colour loss, there's no warping, it is just a full, true image from all angles. CM34G3 does feature 100 sRGB colour gamut. Now that makes it ideal for gaming because it really enhances the colour and the saturation of the image. Now whilst that doesn't mean that it's going to be ideal for a lot of applications, especially such as colour grading for photo documents, in terms of gaming and video, is in immersiveness from a movie, this monitor is absolutely perfect for that. One key thing to note about this monitor, this setup, is that despite not saying it's anywhere on the website or on any other sites, it does actually feature 2 speakers in this, which is quite uncommon on most monitors nowadays. Now they're nothing to shout home about, they're not very great sounding, they're not very loud either, but they're certainly going to be enough just to set it up and have some basic audio from your setup. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get Joe, to get the microphone off his chest, put it to this, and now you'll
to listen to what it sounds like straight from the speakers on the monitor itself. Now, as you can see, as I mentioned, they do sound quite tinny at full volume. At a lower volume, they don't sound too bad.
It's a nice addition to have nonetheless. The CM34G3 is a heavy unit. We're careful. It is a very heavy unit. It does come in at 9.1 kilograms, so you're going to need to make sure that your desk is strong and sturdy, and then everything is in place. The display is completely height adjustable too, as you can see as I'm moving right now. You can adjust it up, down, and you can obviously rotate it either way. Now, the stand that's on the back is laser mountable, so it can obviously be mounted to a different stand or setup or wall mount if you do wish to. But if you're going to do that, make sure you've got a strong heavy duty one, because as I mentioned, it is a large heavy monitor. Despite this large screen size, it is relatively efficient as well, consuming only 37 watts under full power, and then when it's on standby it's 0.4 watts, so it's not going to be causing much of an issue in terms of energy consumption. And that's pretty much the majority of the specs of this display. Now, obviously, as I mentioned in a moment, this Joe here is going to be doing some gaming and showing you the advantage of that 165Hz refresh rate. So that's pretty much it from me. I'm going to leave you back over with him now, so bye. And yes, pretty much exactly as I said on the video, as you can see here, it looks absolutely fantastic. The display quality is absolutely fantastic. Now, considering it isn't a 4K image, it still definitely looks very sharp. Now, obviously, I'm going to show some videos playing in a moment of some more premium 4K content, or obviously 1440p content with some ultra wide playback, so you can really see just how nice the display looks. What I'm going to do in a moment as well is I'm going to play Fortnite on there. I have learned how to play Fortnite since the last video, so I can actually play it myself without having to get someone else in to do that. But then you'll be able to see the 165Hz in full effect with a flicker-free, anti-lagging, no stuttering gameplay. And then after that, I'm going to display a little screen test on this so that you can see the difference between that 165Hz refresh rate compared to a standard lower refresh rate. When it came to testing the PIXL CM34G3, we put it to the test by doing some gameplay, and then we also ran some tests such as the millisecond response test time and obviously the 165Hz refresh rate testing. So what we did first is the one that you're most likely here to see, and that is the gaming. For the sake of this test, I couldn't do the gaming completely on the little PC that you saw at the start of this video. Now, the reason for that is not that the PC isn't capable, it was running Fortnite on this setup, which is a large screen, at 1440 at around 40 to 60 frames per second, which is more than playable, but it doesn't showcase the potential of this display. And that is simply because that is a GPU or a graphics cardless setup. So what I did is I moved the entire display into my home setup, and that is where I do my video editing and rendering and obviously gameplay. Now, the setup that I was running it on in the house is a much more capable system, and that was using a 3080 Ti as well, so that it really did manage to push this display to its full potential. Now, when it comes to Fortnite gameplay, I was running this at the full 165Hz refresh rate from the monitor. This was allowing me to play the game very nicely. I capped it at 165 FPS. Now, when it comes to 165Hz, that does directly correlate to 165 frames per second. So what that does is basically allows 165 frames to display every second, and there's no stuttering, there's no lagging, there's no tearing, and everything just shows fantastically. And the game really did utilize that. So again, I set it at 165 frames per second in the settings. I could have gone higher with the setup that I had, and it obviously would have played it at higher frames per second, but it's almost pointless because the display can only really effectively showcase 165Hz at its full potential. If you go anything slightly higher, you're going to start to notice stutter and also things like tearing. So as you can see here, the gameplay looks absolutely phenomenal. You've got that high quality display, obviously at 1440p, the picture looks absolutely stunning. The colours are nice and bright and vibrant, the saturation is high, all to be expected from an LCD or IPS display like this. The brightness here is actually really quite good because the room that it's in is a relatively low lit room. But as you can see, the game is more than playable. It is fantastic to look at. It didn't skip a beat anywhere, and it just made gameplay super simple. Now, currently I used to game this very game on a LG 32-inch ultra-wide, which was very similar to this, but it was only a 1080p display, and it's only 75 Hz, and the difference is night and day. Comparing it to the LG does really show just how outdated the existing monitor is. So during gameplay, the PIXL CM34G3 really shone bright, and it looks absolutely stunning. Now obviously that high refresh rate and the fast millisecond response time also play factors in this here, because it really does allow the gameplay to run super smooth. And also the response time is definitely something that is very much needed in a game like this, where you're fast-paced shooting and you're going against competitors that aren't just computer-based. So other people are going to be gaming on very similar setups. So you having the edge when it comes to that fast response time and that high refresh rate, and obviously the fact that it is such a large screen, that ultra-wide screen, makes gameplay absolutely fantastic, because you've got that little bit of an edge over your competitors because you can just simply see more. One thing you'll notice is that there's no motion blur. Now again, this is going to be slightly difficult to see on camera because the camera is only effectively recording at a lower frame rate. So the true potential of this display is a little bit difficult to see on the camera. So please bear that in mind when you're watching this video. To the human's visual eye, this display is absolutely phenomenal, and it's definitely something that you need to see in person to really take advantage of its potential. Next, we put the monitor into some testing suites, and we did 3 different testing suites for the sake of this video. I could have gone into more depth like I did in the PIXL 27-inch curved monitor display, but this is a gaming monitor, so I really wanted to focus on the ones that are relevant to what people will be looking for in a display like this. Now, the first test was using Test UFO websites, which is Blairbusters. I used the same site for all 3 tests and ran the tests as you can see here. So the first test was a variable refresh rate simulation. Now this is a test generally designed to focus on G-Sync, FreeSync, Vaser Adaptive Sync and features like that. Now these are all features that I don't believe the PIXL CM34G3 has right out of the box. It certainly doesn't state it anywhere, but you can still get a good example of how the technology in the display works straight out of a box using HDMI and obviously DisplayPort and so on. This is an ideal test to use on a display like this to really showcase that refresh rate. How this test works is it displays a VRR demo. Now VRR is variable refresh rates. This demo uses interpolation techniques to emulate the look of a smoothly variable refresh rate with seamless transitions between frame rates. This is good for video games with a variable frame rate and is a popular feature in gaming monitors. And as you can see, the display is performing amicably at 165 frames per second or 165 Hz. And as you can see, the image looks absolutely stunning. The image is blending nicely, there's no tearing. Again, slightly difficult to see on this camera, but it performed very amicably and very respectfully, and pretty much where we expected it to perform in this test. For the second test, we used Blairbusters UFO Motion Test, and how this works is, as you can see, there is a little image going across the screen of a tiny picture of a little UFO going across the screen on a galaxy background. There are multiple of these going across, and they display at different frames per second. What we're looking for here is a consistent, steady, and easy to see and understand image going across. So obviously on the lower frames per second, you can see that it starts to stutter across because it's only displaying that image a certain amount of times every second. On a higher rate, which obviously as you can see here is 165 Hz, that UFO image is nice and clear to see. There's no stuttering, there's no tearing, there's no lag. The image looks nice and clear, and that 165 Hz setting with a UFO going across looks nice and smooth. Just an added bonus to that test is also the refresh rate with decimal digits. The refresh rate test is designed to accurately measure your refresh rate of your display in Hertz. For this, you have to wait a few seconds for it to do, turn off everything else, and it accurately tells you the refresh rate of your monitor. and again it come up at 165 Hz to be expected. For the final test we did the display MPRT measurement, which is a motion picture response time, to really test that 1 millisecond response time. This is a test that is ideal for LCD displays, which this is, well, an IPS display obviously, but it's still LCD technology. The main reason that this test works well on an LCD display is the fact that it does have a steady backlight. All you have to do here is watch the UFO. You slowly adjust the pixel per frame by 1 until the background looks like a perfect checkerboard. Again, difficult to see on the camera. I'm going to go by my visuals with the dark and light squares exactly the same size as possible. So when we got this done, as you can see in the corner here, it does display at 1 millisecond, exactly as the company claims this display to be. Now there are different ways of testing for this, but I don't have the hardware to do that. This is probably one of the easier tests to do for anyone wanting to test the response time of their monitor. And then finally, what I did then is I just basically ran some videos on the display. I used YouTube for a lot of them. I know YouTube can slightly hinder the quality of some videos and footage, but what I did is I ran some videos at 4K at 1440p so that you can really see just how well the image is displayed. Now when it comes to the video display of this monitor, as you can see, the images are nice, sharp, clear, and really concise. All the details are there. Everything looks absolutely phenomenal. Now the brightness isn't the brightest out there. Now the brightness of this monitor is 400 candela per square meter. Now what that means is effectively 400 nits of display brightness. Now that isn't the brightest on the market, but it is definitely something that is probably up there at the top end of the mid-range in terms of brightness, meaning that the display is more than bright enough for what you'd need. Now this monitor does not have HDR features built in. You can have HDR images effectively shown on your display, and you can change that through some settings on the software itself, so through your Windows software or obviously through your Apple software if you're connecting this to that. But what you'll find is that for true HDR content you need a really bright display of around 1000 nits or more to really take advantage of that HDR technology. But with that said, running at 400 nits, I'm going to call it nits from now on because calling it candela per square meter is quite a complicated way of looking at it. But with that said, the technology of the hardware included in this monitor does really utilize that 400 nits brightness very, very well. Again, the images are super sharp, super clear, and more than bright enough to have in pretty much any setup. Now you'll often find that a lot of gaming monitors are in relatively dark rooms. Not all the time obviously, but in most setups when it comes to gaming, the full immersive experience is a dark background with just you and your monitor looking straight at it so that you've got full on immersiveness and obviously no distractions anywhere. And a monitor with this sort of brightness is more than enough for what you need when it comes to stuff like that. And again, as you can see, the display looks absolutely phenomenal. It is really a very high performer for its price point, and the images look nice and sharp. Even playing 4K footage on this, the footage looks absolutely phenomenal. Now obviously you can adjust for brightness as well. If it comes to things like what I would be doing when it's video editing, I like to have my monitors quite low and dim, and that's more so that I can get a better accuracy on colour terms. Obviously if you're photo editing or anything like that, again, you can adjust for brightness down to suit it to exactly where you need it. But with that said, as it comes straight out of a box without having to change any settings on the display, everything works fantastically. The brightness is more than adequate for any setup, and obviously even in the studio, as we've seen earlier on in the video, the image is still nice and visible, and there's lots of lighting in this studio. So that pretty much wraps up my review of the PIXL CM34G3, an absolute powerhouse of a monitor for a bargain price of just £300. I will leave a link in the description as always so that you can go and grab one for yourself, and I do strongly recommend grabbing one of these for yourself because they are phenomenal. The stuff that you get for the price point definitely makes it a very easy purchase. Now I'm in my workshop and it's very well lit. I've got 2 lights on above me. I've got 2 lights on in front of me. I've also got a studio light over there. I've got a studio light there. I've got the LED light there and then a down light down here. So there's loads of lights shining on this display, and as you can see, you can still see it nice and clearly without any disruptions. Considering the price point again, everything that you get with it, and that 1 millisecond response time with 165 Hz refresh rate, and obviously the display resolution itself, and all the extra USB pass-through functionality, and also those two speakers, which, yes, again, they're not great, but they do work and they are an extra function. That's a little bit of an added bonus. So would I recommend a monitor like this? Absolutely, 100% I would. If you're looking for a gaming monitor for your gaming setup, but you don't really want to spend too much money because you've already spent quite a lot of money on your setup itself, then this is definitely something to look at. The productivity that you can gain from an ultra-wide monitor as well is absolutely a key selling point for something like this. Now, I'm not a massive gamer, but a monitor like this is absolutely ideal for someone like me because of that vast amount of workspace on there, meaning that editing and obviously running multiple tasks at the same time makes it super simple. Now, this one is going to be a tough one to give back. It's sort of made my existing monitor look like a child's toy. It's definitely something I'm going to be looking at maybe investing in myself in the very near future. So yeah, the PIXL CM34G3, a massive thumbs up from me here at Gadget Joe. And that's pretty much it. This has been the PIXL CM34G3. And I've been Gadget Joe. And I've been Gadget Joe as well. And we will see you in the next one. Goodbye.